Hi, I'm Ashley Bowling, your host of Telluride Time on Channel 12, and today I'm going to give you a little history lesson as we walk around the town of Telluride and I point out some historical buildings and tell you some historical facts. Of the county courthouse, San Miguel County Courthouse in Telluride. And the county courthouse is a functioning courthouse. There's a courtroom up on the second floor and administrative offices on the first floor. And this building was constructed on this site on Colorado Avenue in 1887. Not the original site of the San Miguel County Courthouse. The original building was a block away going east and just across Colorado Avenue. That building was near completion of its construction in the fall of 1884. An ambitious young clerk went in early one morning, decided to get a roaring fire going to take the chill off the building so it would be warm for his co-workers to come when they got there. And the fire got out of control and burned the whole building down to the ground, along with a lot of the records. So for 3 years, we didn't have a building to house the county operations. And then this building was constructed here in 1887, and it's been here ever since. This building is one of about 20-some buildings in the town of Telluride on the National Register of Historic Places. Standing in front of the historic Sheraton Opera House. It was built in 1913 by a duo of Swedish brothers who immigrated to Telluride, they thought, to get rich quick mining. They got a job immediately working at the Sheraton mine up in Savage Basin, just below 12,000 feet. And these two had grown up in Sweden, so they were used to snow and very cold winters, but not San Juan, Colorado winters. They could never seem to warm up, and they couldn't make enough money to survive. So after a month of trying their hand at mining, they realized that that was not their cup of tea. They came back into the town of Telluride from Savage Basin, kind of with their tail between their legs, because if you were an able-bodied man in those days, the 1890s, and you weren't working for a mine, there really were no other employment opportunities. These two brothers, the Segerbergs, didn't have enough money to get out of Telluride, but they knew they didn't want to spend their life mining under cold, harsh conditions. So they spent about a week asking everyone they came into contact with in the town of Telluride for another business opportunity. And after a week, they were talking with a man who said, "I've had this idea, but I don't know if I'm the one who can kind of see it to fruition. But maybe you two young guys are energetic enough to make it work. There's no hotel in our entire county. If you two were to open up a hotel, you would corner the market or have a monopoly on lodging here in Telluride." So the Segerberg brothers, with barely a couple dimes in their pocket, realized they didn't have the capital to build what became the Sheraton Hotel and later the Sheraton Opera House. So they wired friends and relatives in Sweden and raised enough money to build the adjoining Sheraton Hotel in 1895. Just after the turn of the century, the Segerberg brothers decided to complement their hotel. So in 1913, they hired the architectural firm Brixton & Kepler from Aspen, which several years prior to that had built the very famous Wheeler Opera House in Aspen. Brixton & Kepler came here, designed and built the Sheraton Opera House for the Segerberg brothers. It's been standing on this site ever since it was constructed in 1913. Although it was built as an opera house, not too many operas were ever performed in here. In the early days of the Sheraton Hotel and then the new Sheraton Hotel, there was a hand-painted board on the wall here in the lobby which contained the rules of the house, which occupants of the hotel were supposed to follow very closely. They went something like this: "Please do not shoot the piano player. He's doing his darndest. Horses were not permitted above the first floor," so it was perfectly acceptable to ride your horse into the lobby of the new Sheraton Hotel, just not up the staircase to the second floor. Beds were 50 cents with sheets and blankets on them. They were 65 cents. No more than 5 people to a bed if you pleased, and as usual, funerals were on the house. When we talk about early history in the Telluride region, of course, mining was a very important part of that early history. But to back things up, the mining history started in 1872. Prior to that, for several hundred years, the Ute Native Americans, and Utah gets its name from the Ute tribe, the Utes would come here in the summertime, hunt some deer and elk, and then leave. They considered this a very sacred valley, and they didn't want to spend a lot of time where their spirits lived. The first name of the community that it incorporated in the valley, which is now Telluride, was the name Columbia. But it was only called Columbia a couple years. It officially became Columbia in 1878. And in 1883, the town changed its name to Telluride. The reason for that is there's a Columbia in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. That's a gold mining community. This was a silver and gold mining community here, and there was a great confusion with the Postal Service delivering the U.S. mail. There were no zip codes in the latter part of the 19th century, and at that time, the abbreviation for Colorado was COL, and the abbreviation for California was CAL. Nobody had a printer or a typewriter to type the name and address on an envelope, and it was scratched generally with a pen or pencil, and the penmanship was not very good in those days. So no one in the Postal Service could tell the difference between Columbia COL, this community, and Columbia CAL, the community in California. So from 1878 till 1883, for 5 years, there was mass confusion in delivering the U.S. mail. Finally, in 1883, the Postmaster General in Washington, D.C. sent an official letter to the town of Columbia, Colorado, asking if the residents would be willing to change the name of their town to make it easier to deliver the U.S. mail. Apparently, Columbia, California, which is still called Columbia today, got the bragging rights because they incorporated a few months before Columbia, Colorado. So the miners and the mining community here in Columbia, Colorado in 1883 said, sure, we'll change the name. We're not even sure where Columbia came from in the first place. The name they came up with was Telluride. I've looked at a lot of maps, and Telluride is unique to this community. In North America, there's one Telluride in South America and no other Tellurides in the rest of the world. There are tons and tons of Columbias. So I, for one, am glad that Columbia, Colorado changed its name to Telluride. Anyone who talks about the history of the Telluride region has to talk about mining. That was an integral part of the roots of everyone's living here. In 1872, white prospectors came into this valley looking for silver. The San Juan Mountains, and particularly the area in southwestern Colorado, are very rich in silver, and our country was on a silver monetary standard through the end of the 19th century. So miners came here by accident, followed the San Miguel River into this valley, did some exploratory digs, and found some very rich silver deposits. Those miners, in the summer of 1872, thought it would be worth their while to stay here and mine silver. The word got out, a flood of miners came here, and the race was on to see who could find all the silver. In 1895, some East Coast politicians lobbied Congress in Washington, D.C., and Congress decided to throw out the silver monetary standard and adopt a gold monetary standard. And that forced the silver-producing mines to close down, and the economy collapsed in the Telluride region from 1895 through 1896. 1 year after virtually no mining happening in this part of the country, some miners got together and said, we've got to get something going or else this is going to be a ghost town in another year. So in 1896, the miners here decided to switch from silver mining to gold mining. And the miners soon realized there was a tremendous amount of gold to be mined in the mountains here. All the mining stopped in 1978. And the Idorado mine and mill closed down in that year. There hasn't been any industrial mining since, but people say there's still a lot of gold and silver in the hills around Telluride.